babies born alive after abortion in Australia?
Yes, and so this is probably the most important thing to emphasise, that it is possible for a child to be born alive after a procedure that was intended to kill them, that is an abortion. And, you know, it's really important we get this straight, Amanda, because even just 2 weeks ago, the WA Health Minister, Amber Sanderson, said to the West Australian, there is no such thing as a failed abortion. She said babies are not born alive after an abortion, and it's just not true. We actually know from data in just Victoria and Queensland that on average every week a child is born alive after an abortion without a legal right to care.
So is this happening more often now that state parliaments have in many cases passed pretty radical laws to allow abortion up to the time at which they would be full term?
Well, this is the reality of late-term abortion, isn't it, Amanda? It's horrific. It's the fact that you have a gestationally viable baby, a child that could be born alive and, if given care, would survive. And yet in our country, those children have no human rights. So in Victoria, it was the first jurisdiction to introduce abortion up to birth. And people say, even in this, you know, farcical Senate report that you mentioned, they said late-term abortion is extremely rare. It's less than 1%. But what people don't realise is that there are over 88,000 children whose lives are ended through abortion every year in Australia. So when we're talking 1%, we're actually talking quite a large number. And in Victoria, for example, since 2008, we've had thousands of children who have lost their life to abortion. And people say, well, those children are going to die anyway. They had life-threatening abnormalities. But actually, close to 50% of those children had nothing wrong with them. They were perfectly physically healthy, and their mums were physically healthy. And in 2011, Amanda, a child was aborted at 37 weeks in Victoria. 37 weeks is full term. My own child, Jessie, was born at 37 weeks. So it is actually a travesty that in our country we do allow abortion up to birth. It's a travesty that this Senate report covered it up, and it's a farce that they did not recommend equal treatment for all children born alive in this country.
So let's get into that. Tell us precisely, what did the committee decide?
We had a day of oral hearing, and what the Senate committee heard, they heard about children being born alive and coroner's reports exposing this. We have 2 coroner's reports, a report for Jessica Jane, who was born alive and left on a metal kidney dish for 18 minutes in an empty room without any kind of care given to her. We also know of a child at Westmead Hospital who was dumped in a medical waste bin while still alive and breathing. And the coroners in those reports were scathing of this situation, of the fact that these children fall through the cracks and do not get care when born. And yet the Senate report did not cover any of that. They did not mention Jessica Jane. They did not mention the unnamed Westmead baby. They didn't refer to the coroner's report. The report that the Senate produced whitewashed this issue. It covered it up, and it's replete with quotes from abortion lobbyists, abortion providers, and it's their unsubstantiated opinion that this isn't a problem. So what they said is that this was already covered by the guidelines, that children already get care if born alive. And if that's the case, then what about baby Xantha, who less than 3 years ago was born in a Queensland hospital and left alone in an empty room for 7 minutes without receiving medical care? And yet again, the Senate report didn't cover that. They also said that these children live for just a matter of minutes. Again, quoting an abortion lobbyist. But, you know, I presented them with evidence of an academic study, a peer-reviewed study in the highly reputable Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and that showed that out of 241 late-term abortions, nearly 50% of those children were born alive. And it also showed that on average, the children lived for 32 minutes. And one child in that study lived for 4 hours, Amanda.
Sounds like we have a long way to go before, as a society, we're properly protecting the rights of vulnerable women, but also vulnerable children. Thank you very much, Dr. Joanna Howe.